My name is Rozalina, and the day my marriage ended did not come with tears. It came with a smile. Not mine, his. Adrian sat across from me in our glass-walled penthouse, the city stretching beneath us like a galaxy of lights. The skyline pulsed with wealth and power, but none of it felt as cold as the man in front of me. He swirled red wine in a crystal glass, watching the liquid circle as though it carried secrets only he could read. His reflection gleamed in the window, confident, polished, victorious. For a week, he had been humming under his breath, pacing the marble floors as though he had conquered something invisible. His phone buzzed at odd hours. Conversations ended abruptly when I entered a room. He arrived home late, his tie loosened, his grin smug. I knew something was coming, though I could not have imagined the cruelty of what he was about to say. The dinner table between us felt like a battlefield. The roast chicken on my plate was untouched, its steam fading. Adrian's movements were unhurried, every gesture deliberate, as though he were savoring my anticipation. He set down his glass and leaned forward, his smile widening. "It is time you gave me my half, Rozalina," he said, his voice smooth, casual, deadly. "After all, what is yours has always been mine." The word struck like a blade. I blinked, unable to process. "Half of what?" His grin deepened, delighting in my confusion. "Half of your fortune. The company. The inheritance. The properties. You would not have any of it without me. And now it is time I reap what I am due." My breath caught. My fortune was not a gift, it was years of labor. I remembered the long nights at my desk drafting proposals under dim lamps, the risks I took when no one believed in me, the inheritance from my parents that I had expanded carefully, turning seeds into an empire. Adrian had been there, yes, but not as a partner. As a shadow. A man who smiled at my victories, sulked at my setbacks, and always hinted that my success was his reflection. "You did not build this," I whispered, my voice trembling but sharp. His eyes narrowed. "I built us. Without me, you would have been too timid to grow. You owe me everything, Rozalina. And the court will see it. Judges like men who know what they deserve." The air thickened. My hands curled into fists beneath the table. He wasn't just greedy. He was rewriting history, recasting himself as the architect of my life, turning my sweat into his entitlement. Humiliation scorched my chest. Slowly, I set my glass down. "You married me for this," I said, the words tasting like ash. Adrian didn't even pretend otherwise. He leaned back, eyes gleaming, his smirk widening. "Of course. And now the game is nearly over. I have already spoken with my lawyer. Papers are ready. Tomorrow we file. Soon half of everything will be mine." The room tilted. Tomorrow. He had planned this step by step, while still kissing me goodnight, still pretending to share my life. My stomach twisted while rising. I wanted to scream, to throw the glass across the marble floor, to beg him to stop. But something inside me shifted. Because in his arrogance, Adrian had revealed more than he intended. He believed he had already won. And men who believe they cannot lose are blind to the knife waiting at their back. That night, he went to bed early, humming to himself as though the future was already signed and sealed. I lay beside him in silence, staring at the ceiling. The city lights cast fractured patterns across the walls, reminding me of the nights I had spent building my empire while he slept, telling myself love meant sharing burdens. But love had been a mask. And tonight the mask had fallen. As his breathing slowed into steady snores, I turned to face him in the dark. I studied the man who had once whispered promises into my ear, who had once convinced me I was his equal. All I saw now was a stranger who had mistaken kindness for weakness. My mind raced through the documents I had kept, the ledgers stored away, the quiet trails of his greed he assumed I had never noticed. For years I had ignored the red flags, his lavish spending, his jealousy of my independence, the way he flinched when others praised me instead of him. I had explained it away as pride. Tonight I saw it clearly for what it was, hunger. I had once believed in love. I had once believed in partnership. Now I believed in preparation. Adrian thought he would walk into court tomorrow and strip me of half my life with a smile. But he did not know the truth. He did not know what I had saved, what I had documented, what I had prepared for the day I hoped would never come. I would not cry. I would not beg. I would wait. And when the judge finally asked for the truth, I would hand over an envelope that would turn Adrian's greed into his humiliation. The war he thought he had already won had only just begun, and I was no longer the woman he believed he could break. The morning after Adrian's smug declaration, I found an envelope waiting on the marble countertop of the kitchen. The paper was thick, its weight already speaking of judgment. My name, Rozalina Moreau, was typed neatly on the front in cold black letters. I tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside lay divorce papers, meticulously prepared, ruthless in their detail. Each line was another incision cutting into the body of my life. Adrian's attorney had drafted a petition demanding 50% of all marital assets, my company shares, the vineyard my parents entrusted to me, the townhouse in Paris, the lakeside property in Vermont, even the art passed down through generations. Every word dripped with his arrogance. Half of everything. Not earned, not shared. Stolen, with the audacity to call it fair. At the bottom of the stack, a note in Adrian's own handwriting chilled me more than the legalese. It is only business, Rozalina. Don't make it emotional. I wanted to tear the papers to shreds, to scream until my voice broke. But rage only scorched the edges of my fear. I understood then this was no passing threat. He had prepared this for months, maybe longer, while lying beside me every night, pretending love still bound us. When Adrian entered the kitchen moments later, immaculate in a tailored suit, he found me standing frozen with the papers clutched in my hands. He poured himself coffee with unhurried grace. "Good," he said smoothly. "You found them. Best you sign quickly. It will be easier for both of us." My throat tightened. "You expect me to hand over half of everything I built?" He lifted his gaze, eyes cold and gleaming. "Built?" He scoffed softly, adjusting his cufflinks. "Let us not pretend. You were nothing before me. I gave you courage. I gave you presence. Without me you would still be small, hidden. You owe me, Rozalina. And in court I will take what I am owed." Something inside me cracked. Not from weakness, but from the shock of seeing his mask fully drop. He did not love me. He had never loved me. He had studied me, calculated me, chosen me as carefully as a man chooses an investment. I placed the papers flat on the counter, my hands trembling. "I will not sign." For a moment his perfect mask faltered. Irritation flashed in his eyes before arrogance swallowed it again. He smiled thinly. "Then you will regret it. Courtrooms are not kind to sentimental women. They like men who know what they deserve. You will fold, Rozalina. And when you do, you will lose with dignity or without it." He drained his coffee, kissed the top of my head as if mocking the memory of tenderness, and left the apartment. The door clicked shut, leaving me in silence so heavy it felt like the walls themselves were watching me. I spread the papers across the kitchen island, each line carved deeper. 50% joint distribution, full claim. My company, my inheritance, my family's legacy. His hands reaching to strip them all away. I could not breathe. I grabbed my coat and left, the city air sharp against my face. By afternoon, I was seated in the oak-paneled office of Howard Lang, the attorney who had managed my family's affairs for decades. He was a man in his 70s with white hair, steady eyes, and the kind of patience forged through years of watching fortunes rise and fall. He read the paper slowly, line by line, his frown deepening. Finally, he placed them on the desk and steepled his fingers. "Rozalina," he said gravely, "this is not negotiation. This is annihilation. He means to strip you bare." I swallowed hard. How do I stop him? Howard leaned forward. "With evidence. Judges respond to records, not emotion. You must show proof that the wealth was yours before him. Contracts, bank statements, receipts, investments you made independently. Anything that proves what he claims is a lie. Do you have them?" My mind raced. I thought of the binders I had tucked into my office cabinet, the ledgers I had hidden away, the quiet documents Adrian never cared to see. I nodded slowly. "I do." Howard's expression softened just slightly. "Then you have a chance. But be prepared. He will not hesitate to lie, to paint you as cold, selfish, ungrateful. He has already written the story in his head. We must write a better one with facts." I left his office with the papers heavy in my bag and a storm in my chest. Adrian wanted to drag me into court as if it were his personal theater, where he would stand triumphant and I would bow in defeat. But he underestimated me. That night, when I returned to the penthouse, Adrian was waiting with champagne poured. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his glass as though mocking me. I stared at him, my fury boiling beneath the calm mask I forced over my face. He thought he had already won. But arrogance is always the first crack in the armor. Because if Adrian wanted war in court, then I would not arrive empty-handed. I would bring an envelope that would transform his greed into his destruction. The divorce papers sat like a viper on my kitchen counter, its fangs already sunk into my future. But where venom flows, antidote can be found. Adrian wanted half my fortune. I would show the court where every cent had truly come from. That night, after he left for another business dinner, I opened the cabinet in my office that he had always ignored. Adrian had little interest in details. He thrived on appearances, not records. But I had saved everything. Bank statements neatly bound, contracts filed chronologically, receipts tucked into folders labeled by year. It had started as habit, then became duty, then without me knowing armor. I spread the papers across my desk, the lamp casting long shadows over the neat rows of numbers. Each page was proof of my independence, a map of my journey before him. The vineyard contract signed 3 years before I even met Adrian. The Paris townhouse deed passed down from my parents in their will. The art collection appraised and insured in my name alone. Piece by piece, the narrative he had crafted. "I built us, she owes me everything," began to unravel. But I knew arrogance alone would not be enough to defeat him. Adrian was clever. He would lie, twist, embellish. I needed irrefutable proof, evidence so precise even his sharpest attorney could not dismiss it. So I dug deeper. I pulled up old emails from the early years of our marriage. I found messages where Adrian had admitted he had no head for numbers and relied on me to handle all financial decisions. I found a receipt for a personal loan I had given him to cover his failed investment in a tech startup. I found documents where he had signed away any interest in my company to appease regulators when we married. The irony burned. He had left a trail of his greed in his own handwriting. Still, I felt the weight of the task. Nights blurred into mornings as I sat surrounded by stacks of paper, highlighting, cross-referencing, building a case that told the truth. He was not a partner but a parasite. Julia, my oldest friend and confidant, stopped by one evening with groceries. She found me hunched over the table, my eyes raw from hours of combing documents. "You look like you are preparing for war," she said softly. I looked up at her, my hands trembling around a receipt. "Because I am." Julia set down the bags and sat beside me, her hand firm over mine. "Then do not fight alone." With her help, I scanned and organized everything into digital files, backing them up on encrypted drives. She helped me photograph receipts, timestamp emails, catalog every contract. Together we built a fortress out of paper. But evidence is not only numbers. It is also behavior. So I began to watch Adrian more closely. He returned home later and later, smugness radiating from him like cologne. He boasted over dinner about future ventures that would make his current wealth seem small. He spent lavishly, ordering bespoke suits, hosting friends in expensive restaurants, showering gifts on people who laughed at his jokes. And I took note of every detail. Every bill he carelessly left on the counter, every receipt tucked into his jacket pocket, every careless message that flashed across his phone when he thought I was not looking. One night, his phone buzzed while he was in the shower. Against the glow of the screen, I saw the message preview. "Do not worry, Adrian. The judge will side with you. She will look like the greedy one." My stomach dropped. He had allies, perhaps even within the court system. I snapped a photo of the screen before it vanished. The more I uncovered, the more I realized Adrian's plan was not born from desperation. It was orchestrated with precision. He wanted not just my money but my reputation. He wanted the world to see me as selfish, cold, undeserving. He would stand in court as the betrayed husband, painting me as the villain. But villains do not collect receipts. Villains do not prepare quietly in the night while their husbands gloat in ignorance. As I slid another folder into my growing archive, I whispered into the silence of the apartment, "You think you are the hunter, Adrian, but you are already in the trap." The next morning, I met with Howard again. hauling 3 heavy boxes of evidence into his office. His brows lifted as I stacked them on his desk. "You work fast," he murmured, flipping through the highlighted contracts. His eyes lit with something close to admiration. "This is not defense, Rozalina. This is offense." I nodded, my jaw set. He thinks he knows the story. I will show the court the truth. Howard closed the folder with care. "Then you are not only prepared, you are dangerous." For the first time since the night Adrian revealed his betrayal, I felt the faintest spark of control. But as I left Howard's office, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. A message appeared. "Evidence means nothing if no one lives to present it." My blood ran cold. Someone else was watching. The message from the blocked number haunted me all night. "Evidence means nothing if no one lives to present it." I stared at the words glowing on my phone screen until dawn, my mind torn between fear and fury. Adrian's arrogance I could handle, but this? A threat from the shadows? Someone else was moving pieces in this game, and I could not yet see their face. By morning I was exhausted but resolved. Hiding in fear would only serve him. If Adrian wanted war, then I needed an army. I began with Julia. She had always been more than a friend. She was the sister I never had. Fierce, loyal, and unafraid of Adrian's polished charm. She found me at the kitchen table surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. "You have not slept," she said, frowning as she sat across from me. "I cannot afford to sleep," I replied, sliding another contract into a binder. "He will not stop until he takes everything. I need to be ready." Julia reached across the table, covering my trembling hand with hers. "Then let me help. No more of this alone." Together we sorted, cataloged, scanned. She highlighted Adrian's own words in emails where he admitted failures, his careless notes scribbled on receipts, his dismissive comments that proved his reliance on me. Julia's sharp eye caught details I had missed. Overlapping dates on hotel bills, unusual wire transfers to accounts I did not recognize, extravagant charges disguised as business expenses. Each discovery added another brick to the wall I was building. But even with Julia's help, I knew this would not be enough. Adrian had money, connections, lawyers who thrived on intimidation. I needed someone who knew the battlefield of courtrooms, someone who could wield the truth with precision. Howard, though experienced, was too cautious for the storm that was coming. I respected him, but I needed fire. Julia seemed to read my thoughts. One evening, as we pored over receipts, she said, "There is someone else you should meet. Evelyn Crane." I raised a brow. "Who is she?" Julia leaned back, her eyes sharp. "A lawyer who built her reputation on dismantling men like Adrian. Ruthless, brilliant, unflinching. When others see walls, she sees doors. If anyone can turn this evidence into Adrian's downfall, it is her." The next day, I sat in Evelyn Crane's office. Unlike Howard's paneled sanctuary, hers was sleek and modern, with tall glass windows overlooking the city. She rose to greet me, a woman in her 40s with sharp cheekbones, a calm gaze, and the aura of someone who had no time for illusions. "Julia told me you need help," she said, motioning for me to sit. "Show me what you have." I laid out the binders, folders, and drives across her polished desk. For nearly an hour, Evelyn flipped through them, silent, her pen gliding across a yellow pad. When she finally looked up, her eyes gleamed with interest. "You have done half my job already," she said. "Most clients come with suspicions. You came with a case file." My voice was low, steady. "I will not let him steal what I built. Not 1 cent, not 1 stone of my legacy." Evelyn leaned forward, her tone precise. "Then we will not only defend. We will attack. He wants to paint you as greedy? We will show the court his greed in black and white. He wants half your fortune? We will show he contributed nothing but arrogance. But," she tapped her pen against the folder, "the key will be timing. We must choose the moment when the truth destroys him most completely." I nodded, my chest tightening with both dread and hope. Over the next days, Evelyn, Julia, and I became a team. Julia tracked Adrian's movements online, his public appearances, his parties, the way he flaunted his supposed control. Evelyn built legal strategies with surgical precision, and I organized the narrative, weaving years of documents into a story no judge could ignore. One evening, Evelyn looked up from her notes, her expression sharp. There is something else you must understand, Rozalina. This is not only about winning. It is about spectacle. Adrian thrives on image. He humiliated you in public. If you want him broken, the exposure must also be public. We will not simply win in court. We will strip him in front of everyone who ever believed his lies. Her words hit me like a spark. Yes. He had raised a glass to my erasure in our own home. He had called me timid, worthless, a shadow of him. My revenge would not be silent. It would be undeniable. That night, as Julia and I walked home, she whispered, "Do you ever think you are in danger?" The messages. I hesitated, then nodded. Yes. But fear is what he counts on. I will not give it to him. Julia squeezed my arm. Then we will face this together. For the first time I felt less alone. But as we approached my building, a car idled at the curb. The tinted window rolled down just enough for me to glimpse a pair of eyes watching. The engine revved and the car sped away. A chill ran through me. Adrian wanted my fortune, but someone else wanted me silent. Evelyn's office became our war room. The polished desk that once held neat files now groaned under the weight of binders, receipts, contracts, and printouts of emails highlighted in yellow. Sticky notes dotted the pages like flags on a battlefield. Evelyn stood at the center, arms crossed, her gaze slicing through the chaos. Julia perched at the edge of a chair, scrolling on her tablet, her eyes catching every careless purchase Adrian had flaunted online. I sat with my hands folded, staring at the empire I had built, and at the proof that he had contributed nothing but arrogance. "We do not play defense," Evelyn said firmly, tapping her pen against the desk. "If you only react, he controls the story. Our job is to seize it. That means precision, timing, and spectacle." She pointed to one of the folders. "The company shares remain your strongest foundation. Signed documents proving he waived interest when regulators required transparency. That is ironclad. We use it first." Julia leaned forward. "What about the vineyard? The inheritance?" Evelyn nodded. "All tied directly to Rozalina's name before the marriage. Deeds, wills, notarized signatures. No judge can dismiss them. But..." She held up a single page with Adrian's signature at the bottom. "This receipt for his failed tech investment is more powerful than all of it. It shows dependency, not contribution. He borrowed from you to fund failure. That contrast will cut him deeper than any accusation." I stared at Adrian's handwriting. Arrogant loops, hurried strokes. The man who once called me timid had needed me to keep his dreams afloat. My chest burned with a strange mixture of fury and vindication. Evelyn moved on. "Now we layer strategy. Civil defense is one path. But public opinion? That is another. Adrian's world runs on image. He humiliated you with his arrogance. We return the favor by showing his greed under floodlights." Julia's lips curved into a grim smile. "So when he tries to play the noble husband, the betrayed man, the court, and everyone watching will already know the truth." Evelyn snapped her folder shut. "Exactly. Timing is everything. He has scheduled a press event in 2 weeks, yes?" I nodded. He had bragged about it endlessly. A charity gala where he planned to appear with donors, a stage set to crown himself as both wealthy and virtuous. "Then that is where we strike," Evelyn said. "We time our filing for that day. The judge receives the envelope. The press receives the complaint. His audience, his allies, his admirers, every one of them watches the truth hit him in real time." My pulse quickened. I remembered the night he raised a glass in our penthouse, declaring victory while stripping me of dignity. Now the same spotlight he loved would become his noose. For days we refined the plan. Julia combed social media for every careless post, cross-referencing purchases with receipts. Evelyn drafted motions, her language sharp enough to cut steel. I reviewed every detail, every timeline, rehearsing the story I would tell if the judge asked. The counterplan became more than survival, it became architecture. Every document another stone, every receipt another nail. We were not simply defending what was mine. We were designing Adrian's collapse. Still fear lingered. The memory of the car idling outside my building, the anonymous messages. Evidence means nothing if no one lives to present it. Someone else was invested in this battle, someone who wanted silence more than justice. One evening, after hours of building timelines, I confessed my unease. What if this is bigger than Adrian? What if there are others who profit from his greed? Evelyn studied me carefully. If there are, then they are shadows. And shadows fear the light more than anyone. That is why you must expose him publicly. Once he falls, anyone hiding behind him will scatter. Her confidence steadied me. But in the quiet of my own apartment, doubt returned. Adrian strutted through the rooms as though he were untouchable, making calls late into the night, boasting about deals that would cement his legacy. He did not know that each word, each careless slip, was fuel for the fire I was preparing. The night before we finalized the documents, Julia pressed her hand over mine. He thinks you are timid, Rozalina. He thinks you will fold. Let him believe it. The moment he realizes you were never weak will be the moment his world ends. I nodded, my jaw set. Adrian had declared war. But he had underestimated the woman he was fighting. Because as we sealed the envelope for the court, I received another message. Strike when you will. He is not the only one who will be judged. My blood chilled. Someone else was planning a move, and it had my name written on it. The morning of the gala arrived heavy with anticipation. Evelyn's team had filed the complaint at dawn. Copies of the evidence were sealed in an envelope prepared for the judge, ready to be presented in court the following week. Reporters had been tipped discreetly. By nightfall, Adrian's pristine reputation would no longer exist. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, my chest ached with unease. For days, anonymous messages had whispered threats from the shadows. Evidence means nothing if no one lives to present it. He is not the only one who will be judged. Now, as I zipped up the black dress I had chosen, simple, elegant, deliberate, I wondered if the warning was more than intimidation. Julia entered my bedroom, her phone in hand. Scar, look at this. She showed me the headline glowing on the screen. Adrian Moreau expected to announce new engagement at tonight's gala. My stomach dropped. Engagement? Julia nodded grimly. He's trying to control the narrative. If he paints himself as the man who bravely left his greedy wife to start fresh with new love, it muddies the waters. By tomorrow, people will argue this is about jealousy, not justice. I pressed my hands against the vanity, forcing myself to breathe. Of course he would do this. Adrian lived for image. If I was going to expose him, he would attempt to cloak himself in romance and reinvention. When we arrived at Evelyn's office, she already knew. The article lay open on her desk, her pen tapping against it. He is trying to preempt us, she said. Turn his scandal into a love story before the truth lands. It is clever, but not clever enough. Her eyes met mine. We move tonight. The moment he steps onto that stage, the complaint becomes public. The press will not see a devoted man. They will see a fraud hiding behind an engagement ring. My pulse raced. And if he twists it? Then you twist harder, Evelyn replied calmly. You have facts. He has lies, which will last longer under light. The hours leading to the gala stretched unbearably. Julia kept pacing. Evelyn stayed cool, refining her statements. I sat quietly, rehearsing my silence. I would not need speeches or explanations. My power would be in restraint, the same silence Adrian once mistook for weakness. As evening fell, a car arrived to take us to the hotel where chandeliers would gleam and cameras would swarm. The city was alive outside the windows, but my thoughts were locked on the envelope waiting for the judge and the eyes that would soon turn to Adrian in real time. We pulled up to the grand entrance. Photographers crowded the stairs, their lenses flashing like lightning. Guests in glittering gowns and tailored suits streamed inside, laughter echoing beneath the vaulted ceiling. I stepped out of the car, Julia at my side, Evelyn a step behind. The air snapped with electricity. Inside, the ballroom glowed gold. Waiters carried champagne on silver trays. A string quartet played softly. At the center of it all, Adrian stood radiant, his hand resting on the waist of a young woman draped in red silk. Cameras swarmed them as she raised her left hand, a diamond catching the light. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My breath caught. It was true. He was announcing his engagement tonight, parading his betrayal like a badge of honor. Evelyn leaned close to me. Remember, this helps us. Every camera on him will be a camera on his fall. Adrian raised his glass, his voice booming across the ballroom. Friends, tonight is not just celebration. It is transformation. Out of endings come beginnings, and out of love comes freedom. Applause echoed. My jaw clenched. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down. A new message from the blocked number. You are walking into a trap. The gala will not end with his humiliation. It will end with yours. The blood drained from my face. My hand shook around the phone. Julia noticed instantly. What is it? She whispered. I shoved the phone into my clutch, forcing a calm mask over my fear. Nothing, I lied. But inside panic churned. Because as Adrian prepared to bask in his greatest performance, I realized something. My plan was airtight against his greed. But what if there were forces in this room determined to turn the knife back on me? As the applause swelled and Adrian beckoned his fiancée onto the stage, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Tonight was supposed to be his downfall. But what if it became mine? The chandeliers above the ballroom shimmered like constellations. Golden light poured across polished marble floors as cameras flashed in rapid bursts. Adrian stood center stage, a king addressing his court. The woman in the red silk dress clung to his arm, her diamond ring catching every glimmer of light. Tonight, Adrian declared, his voice smooth, commanding, is about renewal. It is about courage, about claiming the future you deserve. I have been blessed with success, but what matters most is love. Real love. Applause thundered. He basked in it, chin lifted, eyes gleaming. I stood near the back with Julia and Evelyn, my heart pounding. In Evelyn's hand, her phone buzzed once. She glanced down, nodded almost imperceptibly, then leaned to me. It's done. The complaint is live. Every journalist in this room has just received it. I inhaled sharply. The trap was sprung. At first, the applause continued. But then a ripple moved through the crowd. Phones lit up. Faces bent toward glowing screens. Murmurs began, soft at first, then louder. Is this real? Fraud? Misrepresentation? He took her inheritance? The air shifted. Adrian's smile faltered. He pressed on, trying to keep control. When a man embraces change, there will always be those who fear it. Lies will spread, jealousies will rise. But tonight I stand in truth. A reporter's voice cut through the noise. Mr. Moreau, how do you respond to allegations of financial fraud and misappropriation of your wife's assets? Gasps rippled. Cameras swung toward him. Another shouted, Adrian, the court documents claim you signed away interest in her company years ago. Did you hide this from investors? The crowd erupted with whispers. The woman in red stiffened, her smile trembling. She glanced at Adrian, then quickly slipped her hand from his arm. Adrian's face drained of color. These are baseless. Lies spun by a bitter woman desperate to. Evelyn's voice rang out, sharp and clear from the back of the room. Baseless? The court filing includes receipts, contracts, bank transfers in your own name. Every guest here can read the evidence themselves. Shall I pass out copies? Gasps turned into a roar. Phones buzzed. Guests whispered viciously. The reporters surged forward, microphones raised like weapons. Adrian tried to shout over them. No, this is slander. But then another reporter spoke, louder than the rest. Adrian, what about the hotel bills? The ones linked to your sister's name overlapping with yours? Are those lies too? The ballroom froze. Even the string quartet stopped mid-note. All eyes locked on him. His fiancée in red stepped back as though burned, her face pale. Adrian, she whispered. What is this? He stammered, sweat gathering at his temple. It is nothing. A mistake. Fabricated. The guests did not believe him. I could see it in their eyes. The confidence, the admiration, the awe, they all curdled into suspicion, disgust, even pity. I stepped forward slightly, not to the stage, not to the cameras, but just enough that Adrian's eyes found mine. Our gazes locked. His lips parted, my name trembling on his tongue. Rozalina. It was not arrogance now. It was desperation. A silent plea for rescue. I said nothing. I didn't need to. My silence screamed louder than any words. The ballroom spiraled into chaos. Questions hurled. Cameras flashed like lightning. Adrian's world, his stage, his image, shattered before his eyes. But then my phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out and froze. Another message from the blocked number. You wanted him destroyed. Congratulations. But you are next. My heart clenched. I looked up at Adrian drowning in humiliation, and a sick realization hit me. This battle might not end with him. Someone else was already reaching for me. As Adrian crumbled on the stage he had built for triumph, I felt the noose tightening, not around him but around me. The ballroom collapsed into chaos. Reporters surged toward the stage, shouting questions that collided in the air like thunder. Guests who had moments ago toasted Adrian now shrank back, whispering behind jeweled hands, their eyes wide with shock. The woman in red, his so-called fiancée, had slipped from his side entirely, her face pale as marble. Mr. Moreau, comment on the fraudulent filings. Adrian, what about the overlapping hotel bills? Did you steal your wife's inheritance? Flashes from cameras lit the room in blinding bursts. Adrian staggered under the weight of exposure, his mouth opening and closing without sound. For once, his charm deserted him. I stood near the back with Julia, Evelyn at my side, watching it all unfold. My heart hammered, but my face remained still. I had promised myself I would not flinch. Adrian's gaze found me again. His lips trembled. Rozalina. The way he said my name, pleading broken, almost made me pity him. Almost. But pity was a luxury he had never shown me. Evelyn leaned close, her voice low. You do not need to stay. He is finished. The world has seen enough. I wanted to believe her. But the words on my phone, the message still glowing in my mind, you are next, made it impossible to feel victory. Someone else was playing a deeper game. The chaos only grew. Adrian's business partners slipped quietly toward the exits, their loyalty evaporating in the storm. Investors whispered to each other, some shaking their heads, others already typing on their phones to distance themselves. The orchestra packed away their instruments, their music silenced by scandal. Then came the breaking point. A guest shouted above the noise. Is it true your sister helped you cover this up? The room went dead still. Adrian stammered, his voice cracking. That is not. But the damage was done. The crowd's whispers sharpened into knives. Dahlia, his sister, had not shown her face tonight, but her absence screamed louder than her presence ever could. The implication of collusion spread through the room like wildfire. The woman in red tore the ring from her finger and let it clatter onto the stage floor. You disgust me, she hissed before storming out. Cameras caught it all. The perfect symbol of Adrian's collapse. He bent, trembling, to pick up the discarded ring, his hands shaking so badly he could not close his fingers around it. For the first time in his life, Adrian Moreau looked small. Julia squeezed my hand. He is destroyed. I nodded, though my chest remained tight. Destroyed in the eyes of the world, yes. But a cornered man can still be dangerous. And the anonymous messages proved that Adrian was not the only enemy in this story. Security moved in, trying to escort reporters from the stage, but the damage was irreversible. By the time Evelyn guided me through the side exit, Adrian was surrounded by flashing cameras and shouting voices, his downfall captured from every angle. Outside, the night was cold. Paparazzi waited on the steps, their lenses shifting toward me as soon as the doors opened. Mrs. Moreau, did you plan this? Rozalina, was this revenge? Are you happy to see him ruined? The question stabbed from every direction. I kept my chin high, my lips pressed shut. Silence was my shield. Evelyn ushered Julia and me into the waiting car, slamming the door as flashes exploded against the windows. Inside the quiet vehicle, I let out a shaky breath. My hands trembled, adrenaline crashing in my veins. Julia leaned into me, whispering, "It is over." But before I could answer, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the blocked number. You have cut off his crown, but the kingdom behind him is watching. Be careful what you expose, Rozalina. Some truths are sharper than justice. The blood drained from my face. Evelyn noticed. What is it? I slid the phone into my purse, forcing my voice steady. Nothing. Just noise. But it wasn't noise. It was a warning. As the car pulled away from the hotel, leaving the shattered gala behind, I pressed my forehead to the glass. Outside, the city glittered as though nothing had changed. But everything had. Adrian's empire was collapsing in real time. And yet, in the shadows of that collapse, something darker stirred. Something aimed not at him but at me. Because though the world had just witnessed Adrian's humiliation, I realized with chilling certainty, the next trial would not be his. It would be mine. Morning light spilled across Julia's apartment, but instead of warmth it carried the cold glare of reality. I sat at her small kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee, watching the television flicker with Adrian's downfall. His face filled the screen, no longer polished, no longer smug. Clips from the gala played on loop. His smile faltering as the question struck, the ring his fiancée had thrown clattering to the floor, the reporters closing in. The headlines crawled across the bottom of the screen in bold, merciless letters. Adrian Moreau exposed in fraud scandal. From mogul to manipulator, court documents reveal greed. Charity gala turns to chaos as engagement crumbles. Every channel dissected him, panelists debating whether his empire would survive. One commentator shook her head. The evidence is overwhelming. This was not just a greedy husband. It was a man who built his reputation on lies. The fall will be swift. Julia scrolled her phone, her eyes wide. It is everywhere. Social media is devouring him. Look, hashtags. Hashtag Moreau exposed, hashtag Galagate, hashtag justice for Rozalina. She turned the screen toward me. Memes had already gone viral. Adrian holding the discarded ring, his face pale under the chandelier, side by side with captions mocking his arrogance. My name trended too. Some praised me as strong, others called me vindictive. Strangers debated my life as though it were theirs to own. I swallowed hard. Victory, yes, but not clean. I was no longer invisible. Every eye was on me. By noon, news broke that Adrian's biggest investors had frozen accounts. A major bank announced a review of all his dealings. The charity hosting the gala issued a statement distancing itself, apologizing for the disturbance. Adrian's phone, once a weapon of influence, was now a lifeline snapping strand by strand. Julia exhaled. He is done. I wanted to agree. And yet my phone buzzed on the table. Another blocked number. Another message. You lit the fire. Now watch how far it spreads. His fall will not be yours alone. My hand shook as I turned the screen face down. Julia frowned. Another message? I forced a smile. Just a journalist fishing for comment. But inside dread coiled tighter. These were not taunts. They were warnings, and they were too precise to ignore. That evening Evelyn called. Her tone was steady, professional. The court has acknowledged the filing. Adrian's team is scrambling. But his public humiliation has made settlement unlikely. He will drag this out if only to save face. Be prepared. Prepared for what? I asked. For retaliation, she said simply. When men like Adrian lose power, they reach for destruction. He may target your reputation, your allies, even you personally. But remember, you have the truth. Truth is your shield. Her words steadied me, but only briefly. Because truth was not the only weapon in play. Whoever hid behind those messages knew something. Something bigger than Adrian's fraud. And truth, when twisted, could cut both ways. As night fell, Julia lit a lamp and poured me tea. I stared out the window at the glowing skyline. The city looked unchanged, but everything had shifted. Adrian was no longer the king he imagined himself to be. His empire cracked. His crown fallen. And yet, I could not shake the feeling that I had stepped onto a larger stage. Adrian was ruined, yes, but what if he was only the beginning? Because as the city slept, my phone buzzed once more. The message was only 4 words, but they froze my blood. Next trial is yours. Days turned into weeks, and Adrian's empire collapsed with the same speed he once flaunted it. His name, once whispered in admiration at charity galas and business luncheons, became a headline for ridicule. Every magazine cover carried his shame. The fiancée who abandoned him, the investors who fled, the court documents that stripped away his illusions. The penthouse he once called his throne went on the market. His accounts froze under investigation. Former allies released carefully worded statements, swearing they had no knowledge of his misconduct. The man who once boasted of shaping futures was left clinging to the ruins of his own. I did not attend the hearings where he pleaded for time, nor the meetings where his lawyers tried to negotiate settlements. Evelyn handled all of that with surgical precision. I stayed away, choosing silence over spectacle. For years he had silenced me. Now my silence was the loudest message of all. But the messages from the blocked number did not stop. Each one came like a whisper in the night. The fire you lit burns wider than you know. You destroyed him, but others are watching. Next trial is yours. First I lived in fear. I flinched at shadows, double-checked locks, startled when strangers lingered too long near my building. But as days passed, a realization settled into me. Whoever was behind those words, they were counting on my fear. They wanted me to fold just as Adrian had wanted. And I refused to give them that victory. One evening as Julia and I walked along the riverfront, she squeezed my hand. "He is gone, Rozalina. You won. Why do you still look haunted?" I stared at the water, the city lights trembling on its surface. Because victory is not the same as peace. Adrian was one man, but greed is bigger. There will always be others who try to take what is not theirs. The threats prove it. She nodded softly. "So what will you do?" I inhaled deeply, the cold air sharp in my lungs. "I will do what I have always done. I will prepare. I will build. And I will never let anyone write my story but me." That night, I returned to my office, the same room where I had once spread evidence across the desk in desperation. But this time I placed a single new binder on the shelf. Its spine was blank. Empty pages inside. Not a record of the past, but a preparation for the future. My promise to myself that no matter who tried to threaten me next, I would meet them with the same patience, the same precision, the same quiet power. Adrian had thought money made him untouchable. He believed the law would bend to his arrogance. He believed my silence was weakness. He was wrong on every count. In the end, he lost not just wealth but dignity. He lost the illusion that he was the architect of my life. And when he came crawling back, rumors said he begged for a settlement, even whispered apologies through intermediaries. I gave him nothing. Not a signature. Not a word. Not a glance. Because sometimes revenge is not the fire you hurl at someone. It is the ice of indifference, the refusal to acknowledge the one who tried to erase you. Now when I look back, I no longer see myself as the woman cornered at a dinner table, frozen by Adrian's smug smile. I see the woman who built her own defense, who gathered truth like weapons, who turned silence into strategy. And if you are listening to my story, wondering if betrayal will break you, hear this. It will not. Betrayal reveals. It reveals their greed, their weakness, their arrogance. And it reveals your strength. Do not fold. Do not let them write your story. Build your evidence, gather your allies, and when the moment comes, hand them the envelope that strips away their illusions. My name is Rozalina. My husband tried to steal half my fortune, but in the end he lost all of his. And I will never forget the lesson. When someone bets against your dignity, their greed always ends in humiliation. If my story struck a chord, share it. Let it remind someone who feels powerless that preparation is power, silence is strategy, and truth is the sharpest revenge. Subscribe for more stories where betrayal meets justice, and remember, dignity cannot be stolen, only defended.